Hello everyone and welcome back to Vape Live. This is our fourth outing and they just get better and better, mainly because of you guys. We thank you all for your attendance and all the support and the kind words that you've given us about this event. My name is Patrick Griffin. I am the editor of Vapouround magazine. This is Jordan Millar. He's my right-hand man. And together we are PG and J. We spend most of our time on the other side of the screen, looking into our screens, looking at the news from all over the world and reporting that for you. So we just thought we'd give you a catch-up on some of the things that have caught our attention over since we were last here. What about you? What's tickled your fancy, so to speak?
Well, in and amongst all of the doom, gloom and regulatory changes, there have been a dusting of weird and wonderful stories around the world. And I've got a few of them here that I would like to touch on.
Sure. We like weird and wonderful.
So over in Estonia, there was a punk rocker turned politician who fell victim to the charm and pain of remote work when he was called upon during a parliamentary meeting via video chat, and he was caught listening to music, lounging in his bed and vaping away. He seems to have taken it lightly though, and he's certainly garnered a fan base online since it happened.
I think he got off lightly. I thought I saw one on some guy that was on a Zoom call and he didn't realise it was recording and he was answering the call of nature at the time, which is not great.
It's bad luck.
That's not bad luck. We won't do anything like that.
Of course not.
No. All right, so that's cool. What else weird caught your eye?
Well, there was actually an appearance from Vapes on the red carpet at this year's Oscars. All of the 25 contenders for Best Actor, Actress, Director, Supporting Actor and Supporting Actress walked away with a swag bag worth upwards of $20,000. And in and amongst the luxurious and glamorous gifts was a 24-karat gold vape pen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm never going to be in a situation where anyone gives me a 24-karat gold vape pen, but it's quite good that at a prestigious event like that, the sort of vaping devices and vaping is becoming sort of more normalised. So well done to that. I quite like that one.
Absolutely. Well, it's nice to see Lash, and it was quite interesting, Lash Fairy, who runs Distinctive Assets and is affectionately known as the Sultan of Swag. He's put together the bags for the Oscars, and he came out after the fact and said, while it may look like it's a cornucopia of sort of luxurious and glamorous gifts, what he likes to do is take companies who focus on philanthropy or giving back to the community, and it was nice to see that vaping was included in that.
Yeah, and just Lash Fairy, that's got to be one of the best names ever.
It's got to be.
Absolutely one of the best names ever. That's a great story. What's next?
Moving from the weird to the downright bizarre and heading back down under, there was a weird approach to stopping youth vaping in Australian schools where they've restricted access to toilets and forced students to sign in essentially before they can do their business, which some are arguing is a breach of human rights and others are just saying it is downright crazy. I'm
going to go for the downright crazy. I don't think that there is a problem that children anywhere are sneaking off to the restroom for a quiet vape. I just don't get that. I think it's virtue signalling. I think it's sort of people that are just sort of wanting to get across that sort of vaping is bad and we must stop it at all, thinking it's the youth vaping. I'm not into that at all. Makes me quite angry.
Of course.
But they're doing it, and I don't know. I think as an industry we have to band together and sort of highlight these really, really crazy practices. Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody in the industry, is encouraging children to vape. I've said this so many times. Vaping is for adult smokers only. Yes, young people are going to experiment with things, but the evidence that I've seen, and especially coming out of America, it's that some youngsters will experiment with vaping and they'll go, yeah, done that now, okay, fine. And they don't go on to smoke afterwards. In fact, that's it. It actually stops them experimenting with smoking a lot of times. So yeah, this whole thing about we have to destroy an industry to protect children is just not a thing.
Well, that's the problem. Is you've got flavour bans popping up across the world, and incredibly stringent regulations, simply to fight an epidemic that some say has been largely exaggerated. There are studies that show flavour bans don't do anything to halt youth vaping at all. And in fact, in areas where they've implemented strict regulations on vaping products, they've seen an uptick in youth use.
Yeah. And if flavours were such an important thing for children, what we'd find at schools is that they'd be closing the restrooms because children are going off to brush their teeth every 5 minutes because of those wonderful spearmint flavours.
Exactly.
And that doesn't happen, does it?
No.
No, okay, fine. We got there in the end.
We did. Spearmint, I like that comment. That's a point. Who made that point?
I can't remember, but I just heard it, and I saw it on Twitter or something, and I just thought, okay, that's good, I'll steal it. I think I've used it 3 times now. Yeah, okay. Cool. So from that to... do
you want me to... I could introduce this idea and you could run away with it, because I feel like you can edit yourself to not be like slanderous or bad as you do it. But speaking of bizarre and mad regulations, we have to look over to the US. There was an incident recently where a teenager in Maryland was tased for vaping.
Yeah, this really annoyed me. This is the story that we did. Teen blasted with 50,000 volts for vaping. Look, come on. If you're in law enforcement, you've got to enforce the law. That goes without saying. We're not encouraging people to break the law. Now, it seems that in that area of Maryland, vaping was not allowed. And if police see people vaping, of course it is for them to enforce the law. What I would suggest is getting your taser out and shooting 50,000 volts into a teenager is not a proportionate response. And if this happened once, it might have been, hey, the cop was a little bit overzealous, but I think it happened twice in the period of like 7 to 10 days in the same area.
Less than a week apart. The same thing happened to another group of teenagers who were also allegedly vaping. One of them says that he was tased, and another, there's footage of him being pinned to the ground and kneed in the side repeatedly. It was actually just a week apart, or thereabouts. A group of teenagers was walking along the same boardwalk in Ocean City, Maryland, and they were also confronted by the police for vaping. One of them claims he was tased, as with before, and another, there's footage of him being pinned to the ground by a number of officers, while another repeatedly knees him in the side, and he shouts that he's not resisting. And again, it just doesn't feel like a proportionate response to vaping on the boardwalk. Granted, if that's the regulation in that area, then they shouldn't be doing that. But in no world should police officers find it within themselves to assault teenagers for vaping.
Yeah, I mean, surely it would be better you just go up to the guy and say, hey, you know, you're committing an offence, I need to take down your details, it's a $200 fine, and that will be in the post. Don't do it again. No, the footage that I saw showed the guy totally compliant with the police. He was there and he had a backpack on, he was taking his backpack off, and at that point it's when the police sort of tased him. The police have said that prior to that, he was resisting arrest and he was actually threatening them, and the guy threatened to kill the police. I don't know about that, but come on, hey, Maryland police, this guy was unarmed. That is not a proportionate response. I really think that if we're in law enforcement, we have to get a sense of proportion about vaping. Enforce the law by all means, but don't zap kids with 50,000 volts. That's just not right.
And thousands, millions of people around the world would have to agree with you. There have been a huge number of responses to this online. Again, this is something that's blown up on Twitter, and you've got harm reduction advocates, and then just concerned people all commenting on the situation and how disgusted they are with it.
Yeah, we just pulled in our magazine just a series of some of those tweets, and I think it is clear that this sort of touched a nerve with people, and we can't demonize people in this way for vaping. So I really would make an impassioned plea to lawmakers around the world just to have a sense of proportion about these things. That's all. Please.
Absolutely, but this isn't local to Maryland. These problems, they extend far beyond the propaganda or the sort of anti-vaping mindset is deeply rooted on a global scale. I mean, just staying in the US for a second, there was a story that came out not too long ago about a campaign in New Jersey where they were putting up posters that said vaping is as safe as skydiving without a parachute, which is unequivocally not true. If it were true, then there'd already be 55 million deaths around the world caused by vaping, which is like 10 times the global COVID-19 death toll.
Yeah, I mean that probably is the silliest campaign that I have seen so far. If you know of anything sillier than that, then please let us know. On that one, I actually loved the response. I think the best response that I've seen from that one was from Michael Landl from the World Vapers Alliance, and he was very quick to tweet back, "No, guys, vaping is not."
The logical way to say this is vaping is as safe as skydiving with a parachute. It's at least 95% safer than jumping without.
Right. Let's do that bit again. Okay. So on that, I mean, it is perhaps the silliest thing I've ever seen. Big shout out now to Michael Landl from the World Vapers Alliance. Of all of the hundreds and hundreds of tweets and responses that I've seen, his was the absolute best. And he responded, "No, guys, vaping is not like skydiving without a parachute. Vaping is like skydiving with a parachute. Vaping is at least 95% less harmful than smoking." So I think he basically demolished that whole campaign in one tweet. So well done.
I think that's the thing for me. What's most shocking is that the campaign, which is run by the Partnership for Drug-Free New Jersey, actually links to a website with a bunch of vaping facts, and even on that site, they identify that there's equal to or less than one death caused by vaping.
Yeah, and there's more than one person who parachutes ever.
Exactly. So if we were in a position where vaping was instantly killing people with maybe a 99.99991% fatality rate, then, as I said before, there'd be millions of people around the world who'd lost their lives to what, in reality, is a reduced risk and life-saving technology.
If that was even close to being true, the whole worldwide industry would be shut down in an instant. It's absolutely ludicrous. I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with people putting forward an argument as to why they think vaping is bad. That's entirely reasonable that people who think that should do so. But if you want to win the argument and if you want to be sort of credible, please sort of stick to some sort of facts that are based by some sort of evidence. Just don't make wild, ludicrous claims that, quite frankly, people are just going to laugh at.
Well, one thing I thought was quite funny in the responses to this was somebody tweeted, if vaping is as safe as skydiving without a parachute, then smoking is the equivalent to jumping out with a lead-filled backpack that's on fire.
Yeah, well, don't try that at home, folks. But yeah, I think that's exactly right. Well done, that person, whoever it was.
But I just want to go back to a point we made earlier, that this propaganda and these anti-vaping sort of mindsets are deeply rooted on this global scale. Because I mean that is without a doubt the case. And I don't think that that's helped by the presence of a largely anti-vaping World Health Organization. And they've been very busy over the last few months. I mean, we've certainly seen a lot from them. Not a lot that we wanted to see in terms of vaping and tobacco control. But yeah, they've been keeping themselves very busy. And I know you have a few opinions on the recent activity.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that sort of exercises a huge amount of our time, basically writing about the World Health Organization. When it comes to vaping, they've just got it wrong. They've just got it completely wrong. The policies that they are promoting are not going to lead to health benefits across the world. In fact, it's the opposite. They're literally going to lead to more people dying. And I don't know why they can't see that. And time again, we just see stories on our screens, and we just just go, what?
It's
Why?
just when you
What's
think,
happening now?
just when you think you've seen it all, they do something else.
Yeah. So
just takes you by surprise.
Campaigns that we mentioned earlier about the parachuting thing, you can laugh that off as kind of a little insignificant thing, and maybe sort of have a little laugh about it. But when it's the World Health Organization, when they are doing things, was it World No Tobacco Day?
World No Tobacco Day,
When on
yeah.
World No Tobacco Day, they are giving awards to countries that ban vaping and encourage smoking. Something is messed up there. Seriously, something is messed up there. When they say that, we really want to encourage people to stop smoking, and we really want to encourage people to do every single thing that they can to stop smoking, except use reduced risk products, the things that work best. Don't do the things that will probably work best for you. Do the other things that won't be so good. Because you know what, folks? Vaping is not quitting. This is what they're saying. And they are such a big and powerful organization that other countries around the world listen to them and go, hey, the WHO have said this, so our policy's got to fall into line. And that is where it really, really becomes serious. There's even evidence that countries or groups of countries were very pro-vaping are now turning around to the WHO stance and going like, well, maybe it's not so good after all. Maybe we should also regulate e-cigarettes out of existence. And I'm talking here specifically about the European Union, because part of their new European cancer plan wants to encourage people not to smoke. That's good as far as that goes, but they've lumped vaping in on the whole thing. So they say you should stop vaping and smoking. And all of the studies show, and it's absolutely obvious, if you take vaping away from vapers and say you can't do this anymore, they're going to go back to smoking. And that is very serious, and that will lead to them dying. And a lot of people dying from cancer, which the European Cancer Plan is supposed to be combating. So it makes no sense. When ideology gets in the way of common sense, in this situation, people die. And that clearly is madness. And it just angers me that time and time again, we are reporting on these stories in an endless cycle. I really wish that we didn't have to do that anymore, and people could be told the truth, which is that try vaping. It will probably get you off smoking where other things haven't worked. But we have big, powerful organisations saying the opposite. And how does that make you feel?
Well, like you said, it's infuriating, and there's a massive missed opportunity. A good friend of Vapourounds and of Vape Lives especially, Jeff Canal in the Vape, he pointed out in the last issue of the magazine that vaping is one of those sort of once in a lifetime inventions that come around and they change the course of human history. We had computers, we had cars, we had telephones, and now we have essentially the perfect solution to one of the world's biggest killers. And yet it's just been pushed to the side with either ideology or sort of this moralistic approach that we shouldn't be using nicotine products at all. People equating vaping to tobacco, which is a ludicrous approach to have because the whole point of vaping is to eliminate the dangers of smoking, which include the tobacco. And we're just in a position where we could very, with some effort, but very easily eliminate millions of deaths around the world on an annual basis. And there's just these unnecessary roadblocks standing in the way. And I think once we can overcome those, and if the World Health Organization changes its tune, then we surely can. Once we overcome those, then we'll be in a position where people can take control of their health, they can live happier and healthier lives, and they can sort of just get on without the deadly and dangerous addiction of smoking.
That's absolutely true. And also, I mean, that sounds kind of... So that all sounds very doom and gloom, and quite frankly, it is. But the story doesn't have to have an unhappy ending or a sad ending. And if you're watching this now, you could actually help. You could actually help change it so that it's a positive outcome rather than a negative outcome. There are lots of campaigns going on at the moment which are aimed to educate MPs, educate people who make decisions on your behalf about harm reduction policies, and particularly about vaping and whether you can vape or you can't vape. And if you can vape, the restrictions that they're going to sort of place on it, whether flavours are allowed or not. Politicians react very strongly to the people who vote for them telling their own stories. Mark Oates from We Vape in the UK is currently spearheading a campaign which is just to do this, especially in the UK, because coming up to the COP9 summit in November, the UK has a chance to really put its view to people who will help influence what the World Health Organization does. But we're a global conference here, and this can be done on a global scale. So if you vape, and you really want to do your bit to make sure that your politicians and your policymakers make the right decisions, just write to them and tell your story. Vaping saved my life. Without vaping, I wouldn't be able to play with my kids. I'm happier, I'm healthier. It's the only thing that stopped me smoking. Flavors were really important to helping me doing that. Whatever your particular story is, just tell it. Write to your politician, email them, and just write from the heart. And they will pay a lot more attention to that than they will pay to long sort of scientific documents and stuff. So I genuinely would recommend everybody to do that. And if you're a smoker, listen to these stories and perhaps be inspired by them and sort of try and switch yourself. And if you get off cigarettes because of vaping, then you go ahead and do the same and tell all your friends to do so. It's a very, very simple thing, but it works. We don't have to just say, oh, the politicians make decisions that are really bad. Let's influence those decisions. Let's play our part in getting the future that we want for this particular issue. And if you do that, you couldn't make me any happier. Okay, so moving on, let's turn our focus now to Canada. A lot of things are happening in Canada at the moment, and they're not great, are they?
Absolutely not.
Canada was seen as a place that was so pro-vaping, very much like the UK, that had sort of pro-vaping policies and just really embraced this whole harm reduction initiative. And now they've gone the opposite way. I don't know if it's just a coincidence or whether things are sort of taking a head of steam, but we're seeing more and more stories about Canada in the news and the things that they're doing. You've been following Canada a lot. You're our unofficial Canada correspondent, actually. What's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Canada's certainly changed its tune in recent history, and it's been a wild ride and incredibly shocking. I do cover a lot of the Canadian stories that we do in the magazine, and they're in no short supply with the amount that's going on. One of the most troubling things that's happened over the past 2 months was a proposal from Health Canada for a federal flavour ban. And what that would mean is that everybody in Canada who uses vaping products or knows somebody who uses vaping products or is thinking about switching to vaping to take back control of their health, won't have access to the full range of life-saving products that they could use to quit smoking. And it's just sad to see. The biggest problem for me with that, and with the flavour ban in itself, is the report that outlines the proposal also acknowledges the fact that by doing this, they would push people back to smoking and effectively kill them. Health Canada has acknowledged in its report that what they would do will increase deaths caused by smoking. And to make matters worse, 90,000 vapers beforehand got in touch with officials and got in touch with those health practitioners and told them, we don't want flavour bans, we need our flavours, they're an important part of the harm reduction process and they help us steer clear of cigarettes. And they were just completely ignored. And instead, Health Canada opted to push forward, what's essentially a killer ban.
I could understand that if the politicians and the officials and the people who'd looked at the science basically said, as far as our reading of everything is concerned, the flavours are the bad thing. They're so bad because they're encouraging the youth to take up vaping. A lot of them will go to smoking, and they will then become addicted to nicotine, and we're trying to get rid of that. So by banning the flavours, these are the good things that will happen. I could probably understand that, although I don't agree with it. I could understand with that. When they get to the point where they actually write down in black and white, basically, if we ban flavours, then what's going to happen is all of the stores that sell flavoured products, they're going to not be able to do that anymore. And we predict that a certain percentage of those will go back to smoking, which we know is more harmful than vaping. I think they acknowledge in the report that smoking is more harmful than vaping. But then the kicker for me was they say, but if more people go back to smoking, then we're going to collect more revenue in taxes. This is beyond words.
Absolutely, but it gets far worse than that.
I can't imagine how things could get much worse than that, to be honest.
Well, I think we all know that the UK is the gold standard of vaping regulation. It's the shining beacon in this sea of bad regulation, poor policy, anti-vaping propaganda, and mass media campaigns against the life-saving technology, and that's known around the world. We maintain that position as a world leader in harm reduction. But
I think virtually everybody would agree with that, would they not?
Pretty much, but it seems that some researchers in Canada didn't get the memo. There was another report that recently came out that was funded by Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada, who called for, in and amongst a series of regulations, flavour bans.
Got to ban those flavours.
You got to. But the problem is to back up the calls for the flavour bans, they referenced the UK and said other countries, such as the UK, have already banned or restricted flavours, which, as we all know, is just completely not true. It's a blatant lie. While we have restricted additives, some additives that go into the flavours, we haven't banned any flavours themselves. So for what I assume is a respected health body to make a completely false claim in support of regulations that have been proven time and time again to just worsen the smoking epidemic, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think if you're a researcher and you're quoting the UK as a country to support flavour bans, you really should go back to... You shouldn't be research. You should not be publishing anything that you write, because that is a major error. And I hope that I know that a lot of people have noticed this, and they quite rightly call them out online, because that is just ridiculous.
And the problem for me was that in the report itself, following the study, they acknowledged some of the main reasons that people start vaping, that young people start vaping. The first one, a lot of them said peers, but the second most was quit smoking. They never mentioned that flavours were a main driver for vaping. So for them to publish a report calling for a flavour ban to protect youth, and then in that same report not acknowledge the fact, or at least fail to... But what takes it one step further for me is the fact that the Canadian Vaping Association has come forward and said that the report it completely fails to prove that flavours are a main driver in youth vaping at all, and that banning them would effectively protect youth without damaging the rest of the population. In the report itself, they acknowledge some of the main drivers behind youth vaping. Obviously, your typical ones, peers, and then sometimes, the second most referenced one was to quit smoking. Nowhere did they mention the fact that flavours were acknowledged as a main driver for youth vaping, and yet they're using that to back up restrictions that, again, will damage public health.
I mean, this is really weird. I mean, we had an old adage in journalism, which is never let the facts get in the way of a good story. It seems now that has transferred over to research. Never let the facts get in the way of the conclusions that you want to draw. This is very, very sad. I mean, I think as we've shown and as Twitter has shown, when research like this comes out, it doesn't take long for people to just go through it and just rubbish it and show how wrong it is. And I think it's sort of dangerous that this is allowed to be happening, because what the bad thing is that the people that are reading these reports may not know that the findings are untrue. They may not know that the UK is a beacon of light in vaping, or they may know about it, but they could still cite the report to do whatever it is that they want to do. For some reason, vaping flavour bans is like a subject that won't go away. And despite all the evidence, people are calling for flavour bans, flavour bans, flavour bans. And if you're going to do it, then at least, if you're a researcher or a scientist, at least back up what you're saying with evidence. Don't just make stuff up. It's ridiculous. Again, makes me very, very angry.
And I think we're quite lucky that there are vigilant individuals and groups around the world who are constantly standing against bad regulations. They're constantly fighting for vaping as a harm reduction tool, and they're just standing against this general anti-vaping rhetoric.
And they're kept very busy at the moment, that's for sure.
Of course, yeah. I think one of the most prevalent examples is the World Vapers Alliance and its efforts in Europe at the moment, and soon to be expanding on a global scale. The WVA's conducted a number of guerrilla-style protests against Europe's various anti-vaping regulations, and I think they're certainly worth mentioning here.
But we're not going to say too much here now, because later on in Vape Live, I will be speaking to Michael Landel, the director of the World Vapers Alliance, and he will chat to me about those particular guerrilla campaigns that he's been doing, explain why he did them, and explain why his work is so important. So definitely come back to Vape Live Auditorium and watch my chat with Michael, which will be very informative. So don't give it all away now.
Okay, well, I mean, I won't go into detail then, but I think there are a few names that we certainly need to mention here who are doing an incredible job of fighting for vapers' rights. You've got the CVA in Canada, the Canadian Vaping Association. You've got Rights for Vapers also up in Canada. You've got the UKVIA right here, American Vaping Association over in the US, and CAFRA covering all of Asia Pacific. They're all doing a fantastic job at protecting our rights and protecting the rights of vapers and helping to save lives around the world. And I suppose all we can do now is call on vapers themselves, the consumers, to get involved, as you said, share their stories, write to politicians, write to policymakers, and just get the good word out about vaping, because that, I think, will give us the push.
Absolutely it will. And I think no matter where you are now, if you're not already a member of the local organisation that fights for vaping in your own country, then please look it up and join them, give them your support, because the more people that we can get just sort of telling the facts, just telling the truth, just telling your own stories, that will help counter all the bad science, the bad reports, the lies and the disinformation that's out there that's just needs to be counteracted. And we do it in a dispassionate, just just way of telling, hey, it's working for us. That's what we have to get across, and that's what all these wonderful organizations are doing. A lot of them are doing a lot of work in public. Others are sort of lobbying behind the scenes, but together the cumulative effect of this around the world can only be to protect our industry and to make sure that going forward as many lives as smokers as possible can be saved. And that's what we're all about at the end of the day, and that's what we should continue to fight for and to push for. And through the pages of Vapouround magazine, on our social media platforms, on Vape Live, we will do our bit to highlight some of the bad things that are happening so that we know what we're up against, but also highlight the brilliant work that is being done there to protect this industry, and long may that good work continue. So that brings this segment to a close. Once again, thank you very much for being here. We have got a lot of exciting things coming up at Vape Live. Do take time to check out all the booths of our exhibitors, interact with the guys there, say hello to them, and come back here to Vape Live and check out our great speeches. Friday the 13th is the final day. Friday the 13th is unlucky for some, but for one person listening now, it will be very lucky indeed. We're giving away a £700 guitar package. We've teamed up with Vape to do that. So Friday the 13th, at our grand finale, you could win a guitar. So if you want to win a guitar, courtesy of Vape Live and Vape, come back on Friday the 13th at our finale at 4 p.m. UK time, and you could be in with a chance to win. Myself and Jordan here at PG&J will be presenting that segment for you, and we're looking forward to that immensely. But for now, we're going to go and check out what else is on offer at Vape Live, and please do the same. Thank you very much. It's been fun. Bye-bye.